Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me. Hello, everybody. Happy birthday to me. When you are watching this, this video will come out on my birthday, August 13th, Slay. My birthday and my daughter's birthday are both in August. We're both Leo sons, Slay. And David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson's birthdays occur in exactly the week between my daughter and my birthdays. So I love that little trivia about our family. We have a family of X-Files fans, if you cannot tell from the poster right there. My spouse is a Sagittarius, but he also loves the X-Files. So if you haven't guessed it from the song, we are going to be reviewing, as a special birthday treat to me, the season 1 episode, Beyond the Sea. Now, this vlog series is about underrated X-Files episodes. X-Files episodes, a lot of fans and people within and without the fandom usually don't talk about, usually don't review or analyze. But today we're making an exception because it's my birthday. Drink Bacardi like it's your birthday. Watch some X-Files like it's your birthday. As 50 Cent, to paraphrase the rapper 50 Cent. I will be drinking Bacardi like it's my birthday. And you'll have to excuse me. I still have this low-grade bronchitis I'm struggling with, but we're going to have some fun today. So Beyond the Sea is what I consider arguably the best X-Files episode. I will give my reasoning for that throughout this vlog. I just want to say, wow, X-Files, way to peak early. Beyond the Sea is in season 1. It is written by the dynamic duo of Morgan and Wong, who wrote some of the best X-Files episodes. They wrote Home. They wrote several other episodes. Just stellar dynamic duo. It is written by David Nutter. It is not written by David Nutter. It is directed by David Nutter, who has a hilarious name. I just want to say, no offense to you, Mr. Nutter. I'm sure you're a fine person, but your name always makes me giggle. And props to him. The directing in this episode, the visuals, the atmosphere, the imagery scare me every single fucking time. And I first watched this episode when I was like 11 years old, and I rewatched it a week ago when I was 38. I am now 39 as you view this video. And it's terrifying. It's great. It's like rewatching The Shining or The Exorcist. It just gets me every time. It will never not terrify me. My hand's going to be cramping a lot in this video. I just want to apologize firsthand. Also, we have a sponsor today. As usually, our sponsor is water. Today I'm drinking out of my Universal Studios mug because I need a lot of water to get through this review. So cheers. Hydrate out there. It is one hell of a brutal summer, and don't get dehydrated. As John Mulaney would say, hydrate before you dehydrate. Or maybe that's misquoting John Mulaney. Anyway, I love to say that to my daughter, and it always annoys her because she's a tween. Let's talk about Beyond the Sea. So this is written by Morgan and Wong. It's directed by David Nutter. This is a Scully-centric episode. You can probably tell why I love it right off the bat. But it also has, I'm going to say, the most interesting and complex villain on the X-Files, or antagonist. And he's also maybe the good guy? We don't know. One of the most interesting and complex characters in the series, in Luther Lee Boggs. And it talks a lot about Mulder and his psychology, which we are going to delve right into. It also has some just god-tier family moments with Scully's family. I think outside of the episode A Christmas Carol, this episode is the one that like delves into her family's dynamic. It's really good. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the episode begins with Angel and a Christmas tree, and then you see Don Davis. Don Davis is one of those actors. Every time I see him, he just puts a smile on my face. He was in the show Stargate, SG-1. He also plays the judge in my favorite movie, Best in Show. The movie Best in Show, if you haven't watched it, what the fuck are you doing? Go. It's probably streaming on some streaming service. We own it on DVD. It's about these dog show enthusiasts, and they're just a bunch of crazies. Don Davis plays the judge. Wonderful. A lot of characters, a lot of actors that were on the X-Files are in the movie Best in Show. Jane Lynch is on it. It's just great. Go watch it. Please watch Best in Show. One of my favorite movies. So Don Davis is there, and he's not judging a dog show, but he's judging his daughter. So, Don Davis plays Scully's dad, Bill Scully Sr. We will be calling him Bill Sr. from here on out, because we don't want confusion. And he immediately starts giving his daughter, Dana Scully, shit, because he's like, you're going to take this Christmas tree down, right, after Christmas? And Scully's like, nope, I'm going to leave it up all year, because when we were kids, you made us take the Christmas tree down, like, the day after Christmas. And I'm like, that hit a little too close to home. Because even today, my mom will not put up any Christmas decorations until the week before Christmas and the day after. I think it's New Year's Day, Mom takes her tree down. And that was practical on her behalf because she was raising 3 very rambunctious kids. And when we saw the Christmas decorations, we lost our fucking minds. So I can see her reasoning there. Was that Bill Sr.'s reasoning? We don't know. I think it was. Anyway, he's like, hey, if you like sweeping up pine needles all year, if you consider it, you know, if that's your idea of a good time, like, be my guest. And then Maggie Scully, and this is the first episode, I believe, that we see Maggie Scully, played famously by Sheila Larkin. Love how she immediately starts dunking on her husband. She says, yeah, to Bill Sr., she's like you would be the authority on having a good time. So not only does this set up this lovely dynamic between Scully and her father, it sets up a wonderful dynamic between Maggie and her husband, and Maggie and her daughter. And first of all, Sheila Larkin is rocking this perm. It's amazing. I have nothing more to say about that. Sheila Larkin's a fox, and just, yeah, she's a fox, man. She's a MILF. That's all I have to say. She's just, wow, she's great. There's something so wholesome and special about watching season 1 baby Scully interacting and like joking around with her mom and dad. A lot of people watch How the Ghost Stole Christmas, an episode I revile, around the holidays. It's like their X-Files tradition. I watched the opening scene of Beyond the Sea because it's just, when you watch a scene like this in the X-Files, especially in the earlier seasons, you see like what this show could have been. I'm going to be switching hands a lot because my arm hurts. You see what the show could have been. Like, this is the road we could have gone down instead of traumatizing and torturing women or making reproductive trauma part of our storyline. Like, this is what we could have had. Just these lovely, wholesome moments in a sci-fi television show. So, just I could do a whole vlog on the cold open of Beyond the Sea. I could do several vlogs about it, but I don't have that time. I'm going to highlight some moments I love. This is where, very famous in the fandom, Scully being referred to as Starbuck, her referring to her dad as Ahab. It's their cute little it's their little pet name. It's just touches like that. It's so precious. Like, and you see this family in a very wholesome light. Scully's mom, like, they're having Christmas dinner at Scully's house. And it just really hits home. I mean, I remember that time when I got old enough and I had my own home and I was like, yes, I can have my family over for Christmas dinner. Like, I can host. It's like a big fucking deal. And you can tell it's a big deal for Scully, too. She's just so proud and excited for herself. I also want to talk about the way Scully's dressed. Sheer shirt, tucked into high-waisted pants. Got little barrettes in her curly hair. I'm like, slay queen. No one rocks those high-waisted slacks like Dana Scully. Just want to say that. Season 1, Gillian Anderson. Her mom Maggie begins to clean the table off. And Scully's like, no, Mom, I got this. And Maggie's like, surprised. She's like, oh, okay. Like, it's just, that's something my mom would do or say. Every time my mom comes over to our house to eat dinner, she's like, I have to help clean up. And I'm like, no, Mom, you cleaned up for us for years. You deserve to sit down and, like, have a good time. Then Bill Sr. looks at Maggie and he's like, hey, Maggie, let's shove off. Let's, go. He's a Navy captain. And he uses nautical talk in, like, casual speech, which is just, it's so fucking cute. I love it. Bill Sr. in the fandom gets a lot of hate, and I think most of it is undeserved. A lot of people see him as this malicious person who is responsible for Scully's psychological damage. I disagree, kind of. I don't believe Bill Sr. is a bad man. I think he was raised in a generation where men were expected to be stoic and emotionally unavailable. And I think that's kind of why he acts the way he does. But he is a man who cares deeply for his family. He loves his children very dearly, and I think he shows that love by caring for and protecting his family. But then his emotional unavailability, how he never told Scully he was proud of her, very much fuels a lot of the things and a lot of the negative behavior she has. So he's not innocent. As a parent, I think he should have made the effort to learn how to communicate with his daughter in a healthy way. But I think in the environment he was raised in, that wasn't an option, or that wasn't seen as an option. I don't think he's a bad man. A lot of people see him as, like, the worst person, and I'm like, Mulder's dad is right there. He very intentionally harmed hundreds, if not thousands, of people through his work and abused his wife physically and verbally. I mean, like, he's there. Bill Sr. never did that. But Bill Sr.'s not completely innocent. The Sex Files podcast, the first one of their podcasts I listened to was about Beyond the Sea. It's what got me into their podcast. And they talk about how women are saddled with these titles like daddy issues or single mom, and they're reviled for it when there is a man to blame largely for this. And I always think about that when I watch Beyond the Sea. Like, Scully is always dragged for her daddy issues when it's not her fault that she's like that. We'll get into that a little bit. But the relationship shown here between Scully and her dad, you can see, like, the flaws in it. It's not a perfect relationship. Excuse me. But it's a good relationship. She loves her dad. He loves her. And I believe they both have a hard time expressing their emotions. Scully's more like her dad than I think people give her credit for. And I think a lot of that emotional unavailability Scully has, she gets from her father. And you can see Maggie very much being the matriarch, this leader of the family. And I like that. That's kind of a nice role reversal. Also, when Scully hugs her dad goodnight, he looks over her shoulder at Maggie, and she gives him this raised eyebrow look that says, "Go on, Bill." And I love that. Again, you see this dynamic between Maggie and Bill. Like, they've been married forever. They know each other so well. A lot of their behavior presented here will be mirrored by Mulder and Scully later on in the series, because Mulder and Scully are basically married too. In fact, in Die Verset, I still can't pronounce that. Whatever. I don't speak German. Mulder gives Scully that same look that Maggie gives Bill, and it's really good. Like, that's a nice callback. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's great. Maggie very much wants Bill to talk with Scully about her job, which is something her father disapproves of, her becoming an FBI agent. And as a parent, like, that's a dangerous job. Like, yeah, I would have, I would be anxious about my daughter going into that field. I'd be worried for her. Again, like, I don't think Bill Sr. deserves the hate he gets. It's about to rain, and I might have to run out to let my car windows up because I left them down. Well, maybe it's not too... I got my shades on, so maybe I'm just not looking at it correctly. Anyway, Bill looks at his daughter, and he says, "How's work?" And Scully, like, gives a little nod, and she's like, "It's good." And he's like, "Good?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, good night." And, like, he pauses after that, and you can tell he really wants to say more to Scully. And at this point in the show, I pause it, I find my daughter. If she's not here, she's with her grandma's, I call her, and I say, "Baby, just so you know, I'm proud of you, and I love you, and you're perfect." I just... It's one of those scenes. It triggers me as a mom. Like, Bill Sr. does not know he's about to die, and he can't tell his daughter that. And as Scully's parents walk out the door, she kisses her mom. It's very sweet. There's also a bomb-ass wreath on Scully's door. Like, you see the look on Scully's face, and she's like, "I really thought tonight would be the night my dad told me he was proud of me and he approves of me." And it just breaks my heart every fucking time I watch it. Even more so now that I'm a parent and I'm raising a child. And that's how I think Bill Sr.'s not completely innocent here. I don't think he's a bad man, but he could have learned and adapted and learned to communicate to his daughter in a healthy way. So, Scully's in her home. I want a season 1 home core Scully Barbie doll in her perfect ass little apartment in Georgetown. She's asleep on the couch. She's wrapped up in a blanket and a little Scully Rito. She's fallen asleep watching this hair infomercial. It's the kind of stuff that I don't know if they still sell it, but it's this can of spray. It looks like that stuff you spray on your window to look like snow. If you grew up in the South, you know what that is, because we never fucking get snow at Christmas. And you spray it on your window to look like snow. My aunties had that. We had a lot of fun with it. And what it does is you spray it on bald people, and it, like, makes it look like there's hair. You pretty much just spray paint a bald person, which is just all kinds of funny. I'm sorry. It's fucking hilarious. That's some funny shit. The guy selling it on the infomercial looks a lot like Chris Carter. I don't think it's Chris Carter, but it looks uncannily like Chris Carter. the creator of the X-Files. And it cuts to Scully. She's falling asleep on the couch. Mulder, like, gets all this talk about how he falls asleep in random places. But Scully's the one who really does it. Like, Mulder will just, like, fall asleep on his couch. Scully will fall asleep in the most strange places, like a little cat. Like, and I really love that about her. Scully wakes up, and she sees her dad. He's sitting in, like, a recliner across from her. And he's, like, got this very blank expression, and his lips are moving, but you can't hear what he's saying. Scully looks up, and she gives a little, she says, "Dad?" And she sounds just like that. It's so cute. Again, I could do a whole vlog about Gillian Anderson's acting in this episode. This is the episode that's kind of famous for, it was like the first episode where the writers and the directors, like, really wanted to show off Gillian's acting skills. And boy, how did she knock it out of the fucking park in this one. She knocks it out of the park in every one, but this one I'm just like, God damn it, Gillian. It's little things like that, how she'll change the inflection of her voice. It's so, it just, like that little, "Dad?" It just hits me in the stomach. Like, how I would interact with my parents. And my father's passed away too. So, like, I relate to Scully on that very visceral, very personal level. Scully sits up and she's like, "I thought you left." She's talking to her dad. He still is, his lips are moving, but he's not saying anything. In the behind the scenes of this episode, Don Davis is reciting the Lord's Prayer, which is kind of a nice touch. But of course you cannot hear him. Scully, and then the phone rings and Scully looks back at where her dad's sitting, like she's distracted by the phone, and he's gone. Now, at this point, I think Scully believes she was dreaming. Because, you know, when you fall asleep in a random place, you're going to have some pretty fucked up dreams. She goes to answer the phone, and as comedian Roy Woods Jr. would say, when you pick up the phone and a loved one is, you hear a loved one just doing heavy breathing or sobbing, you know it's not a good call. It's a bad call. And Scully gets that look on her face. She's like, oh, shit. And I think all of us, if we've lived long enough, have gotten those calls where you hear a loved one on the other end of the line and you're like, you just hear them sobbing and you're like, oh, God, no. Like your stomach drops and your heart freezes up. It's that feeling. Again, like Gillian's acting. God damn it. It's God tier. She is nothing short of a goddess in this episode. So, whoa. We have a walnut tree and like, it sounds like bombs are dropping at any rate. So we have a tin roof, so it always sounds like a bomb dropping. So, like, then Scully's mom comes on the line and she's like, we lost your dad. And she's like, he had a massive coronary about an hour ago. So when Scully saw her father, he had been dead for an hour. Scully looks back at where her dad was sitting, and this look comes over her face. And it's not the look of, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I cannot believe I saw a dead person. It is, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening again. And we'll talk about that. This is not the first time Scully has seen dead people. That is my headcanon, and I have ample evidence to back it up. This video is 24/24, and this is just the cold open. This might have to be a two-parter. Like, this episode is so good, I could literally talk about it for weeks. So, you get the title credits. And then you see two teenagers making out in a car. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to see this. This is gross. Chris, like, Chris Carter especially does it, but the writers of the X-Files do this, where they, like, have these underage people, like, engaging in these sexual encounters, and it's nasty. But our two main characters, who are of consenting age and have the most sexual chemistry of any humans on the goddamn planet, never get a sex scene, so fuck me. Anyway, they're making out in a car, and a guy walks up to the car, and we're assuming it's a police officer, and he's like, hey, okay, you crazy kids, get out of here. The boy, Jim Summers, and his girlfriend, Elizabeth Hall, they look at the dude's shoes, and they're like street shoes. They're not a police officer's shoes, which is pretty clever. This is one of my anxiety nightmares, where I get pulled over by a cop, and you're brutalized by them. Anyway, the cop is like, show me some ID, and Jim Summers is like, no. He's like, show me your ID, and the guy knocks him out with his flashlight. You see Jim, like, his blood splatter on the window, his girlfriend's looking out, and that scene is terrifying. Like, that's just all my nightmares just there. So then you cut to Spooky Boy. He's here. Mulder is reading this file. He's got his shirt sleeves rolled up. He's got his big meaty hands and his fucking stupid tie. So me and my spouse have this game when we watch The X-Files. We'll rate Mulder's ties on a scale of 1 to 12 based on just how fucking ridiculous they are. This tie is a solid 13. Okay, it's got these white rectangles. It's got these burgundy ovals, and it's got these little fucking light blue dots all along it. It looks like the geometric designs in Disney's Fantasia, the original, to the I think it's a song from Beethoven. It looks just like that. I mean, there's a lot going on that tie. It's fucking ridiculous. I'm gonna say it's Mulder's dumbest tie out of the series. He wears it in several other episodes. I think he wears it in the episode Roland. He wears it a lot in season 1 and season 2. I think Scully finally got up the courage to say, Mulder, that tie's fucking stupid, or she just burned it. So that's probably what happened. So, Mulder's looking at this file. Scully sneaks up behind him. It's very cute. She's sneaking up on him like a little cat. You know, like when you're walking through your house and your cat like just jumps out of fucking nowhere and bites your ankle. That's what Scully's doing to Mulder. So she sneaks up behind him and she looks over his shoulder and she's like, the last time I saw you that engrossed in something, you were reading the adult video news. And then she gives this little pleased smile. She's like, because every time Scully makes a porno joke, she looks so proud of herself. She's like, I made a dick joke. She's so proud of herself. So Mulder turns to her and he's like, how are you doing, Dana? And I think this is the first time he's called her Dana in the series. He calls her by her first name, like, sincerely, not like playing around. I think 4 times in the series. I might be wrong. There might be some other ones. But, and it's always in a moment of emotional distress. Either Mulder having emotional distress or Scully having emotional distress. So Mulder's behavior in this scene is wild. Oh boy. Like, I'm gonna need a drink before we do this one. I think I am gonna make this a 2-parter video. So Mulder tells Scully, he's like, how are you, Dana? And Scully turns away from him and she kind of mutters to herself. She's like, huh, Dana. Like, she's like, wow, he really called me by my first name. Like, I can't believe that. And it's like she understands Mulder's trying to comfort her. And then she's like, hey, what are you working on? Because Scully's like, I have to work. That's how I cope. You know, that's how I can work these feelings off that I don't want to confront. So Mulder tells her about this case, and he says these two kids, Jim Summers and Elizabeth Hall, were abducted. And, excuse me. Then he tells Scully about this guy named Luther Lee Boggs. And he's the serial killer that is destined for the gas chamber in North Carolina. And he'll be put to death in 5 days. And Mulder says the abductor of Jim and Elizabeth has, like, contacted the FBI and say that he will kill them in 5 days. So Mulder and Scully sit down in front of Mulder's desk. They sit down in tandem. They're like both sit down at the same time. It's so cute. Like, they're already on this wavelength, and it's season 1. I love that. Mulder tells Scully, like, about Luther Lee Boggs. And he says he was the serial killer. He said, I profiled him back in the days when I was a criminal profiler. Excuse me. I love how this show is always telling us what a brilliant profiler Mulder is. He profiles maybe 2 times in the series, and Scully's doing all the profiling at every other time. Excuse me, this bronchitis has got me. So, Mulder tells Scully that Luther Lee Boggs, what Mulder believes is that Luther Lee Boggs is working with excuse me. Luther Lee Boggs is working with this person who abducted Jim and Elizabeth. And he will, like, tell them, Boggs will tell the FBI where this guy, Henry, as we find out, is hiding these kids in, like, a ploy for his life. He's like, give me life in prison instead of putting me to death. Mulder believes that Luther Lee Boggs is faking. And Boggs' thing is he channels the spirits of the dead. And he can also see into the past, into people's past. And he can also see into, like, scenarios in the present. That's what he's claiming. And Mulder believes that Boggs is a fraud. And I have a lot to say about that, okay? About why Mulder believes that. But we're going to talk about this scene first because it's kind of fucked up. So Mulder's like, hey, I'm going to leave for Raleigh. He's just assuming Scully's going to stay here because it's the day of her dad's funeral. But Scully has to work to cope. So she's like, I'm going to go with you right after my dad's funeral. Dana Scully, I don't think that's a healthy way to process that, baby. Scully's like, I need to work. And then Mulder reaches out and he cups her cheek like that. So I'm kind of torn on this. Like, that's erotic as hell out of context. But in context, Scully is freaked out by this very intimate touch from what at this point, I think she considers Mulder a close acquaintance and, like, maybe a good friend. She does not, I don't think Scully has romantic feelings for him right here. And to get such an intimate touch from him in this way, understandably freaks her out. That would be like going into work and your coworker just touching you that way. Yeah, that would freak me out too. However, Mulder is bad at expressing his feelings. And I think I also think Mulder struggles with boundaries. Like, he does not understand this is a line you should not cross. Okay, with this coworker, you have a crush on her, but you do not have this intimate relationship with her yet. And I think Mulder very much struggles with boundaries. Like, it's kind of his whole thing, like, how he takes advantage of Scully. And again, like, he's not completely innocent there. Like, he should be learning. And he should be saying, like, okay, this is not cool. I should learn about boundaries and ask Scully, is this okay with you? And Mulder just can't fucking do it. And again, like, I think some of that is a facet of his autism. Like, he does not know how to emotionally connect, so he's going to emotionally connect in this physical way. But also, he's a grown-ass man. He should be taking responsibility and learning about that shit that literal 5-year-olds learn about in kindergarten. Okay. Like, okay, I don't know what you do in kindergarten now. But when my kid was in kindergarten, like, yeah, they'd have lessons. Like, the counselor would come in and say, like, okay, this is a good, you know, this is consent. You know, we always ask for consent first, like, before we even hug someone, because that's good and healthy. Like, Mulder, you're fucking 38, dude. You need to know this shit. So Scully's freaked out. She's like, oh my God, he's touching me this way. Like, what do I do? And even when he leaves, like, she's still shaken up about it. He's like, hey, I'll see you at the airport. And she's like, yeah. Like, she's visibly shaken. You also see Max Finnig's nightcap hat on the hat rack as Mulder walks out of their office. And I like that. That's a cute little touch. So Scully freaked the fuck out by Mulder's random as shit caress. She opens the file drawer and she finds an X file that says Visionary Encounters with the Dead. And as soon as she picks it up, she puts it back in that file and slams the drawer shut. And that triggers me on a level I never even knew existed. And it's very much the first time we get this commentary on Scully's character that she's afraid to believe. And she says that at the end of this episode. She's like, I'm afraid to believe. I'll talk some more about that, don't you worry. Hey, it's time to go to a funeral. So, I do these Twitter rewatch threads before I make these vlogs, and it helps me, like, it helps me get my thoughts in order before I do these videos. And one thing I said is, like, millennials listening to the Bobby Darin song, Beyond the Sea, and they're like, oh, it's that catchy song from Finding Nemo. And then it's, like, Gen X listening to Beyond the Sea, and it's just this guy fucking sobbing. Which is, like, yeah, that's on point, I think. So, this person is out on a boat, and he's scattering Bill Sr.'s ashes across the water. And the song Beyond the Sea is playing on, like, a speaker. And then you see the Scully family watching this from the bank. So let's talk about the Scully family here. So you have Scully's two brothers, Bill and Charlie. Don't get too used to seeing Charlie. I think we see him one more time in the series. Charlie Scully is like Ozzy Osbourne's third kid. I think her name is Melissa, and she was never on the show The Osbournes. She, like, took one look at her family, and she's like, I don't want any part of this. Thanks, but nah. Which I think is hilarious. There's also a song about the Osbournes, and it's like a funny parody song, and one of the lines is like, if I were an Osbourne, I'd have a sister I never see. And that's how I think about Charlie Scully. I like to do a parody of that song, and it's like, if I were a Scully, I'd have a brother I never see. So we see Bill and his wife, Tara, played by different people, I just want to add. We see Charlie and his wife, question mark, and their two boys, who are Scully's nephews. And they're kind of maybe older. They're maybe like 8 or 10. So, like, yeah, Charlie was the youngest child who was the first to have kids. I feel that too. I'm the youngest child in the family, and I'm the only child that's had a kid. So, am I the Charlie Scully of our family? X-Files theme music plays. So, then Scully is standing with her mom. Let's talk about that. Scully is a middle child. Boy, oh boy, is Scully a middle child. So, her family's grieving, and Maggie, tears are streaming down her face. Like, her face is tear-streaked, her eyes are red and swollen. But she's not crying. She's past that. Her voice is almost hard with resignation. As someone with a very strong mother figure, I can relate to that. Like, she cried her tears before her kids came. And throughout the series, we'll see Maggie being this very... I am so sorry. This bronchitis has got me. Maggie being this very stoic leader of the family. Which is a role Scully assumes, like, with her own found family. Like, with Mulder and Skinner and Reyes and Doggett. And her baby boy. Oh, my goodness. I do pretty well until I have to talk a lot. So, Scully is there with her mom. And, excuse me, Scully is not only not crying, she's not grieving. You see her visibly holding that back. And she does this throughout this episode. And you get this vibe from Scully that she was the child who had to be stoic and strong for her family members. And you see her take on this role with her found family, with Mulder, with Skinner, with Doggett, with Reyes, with her son. She's like, I have to be the strong one. Like, I have to assume this stoic role. And oh boy, does that hit me on a visceral fucking level. I am definitely that child in the family. Like, and this is a role that's most often cast upon a girl child. Like, her brothers get that luxury of grieving. And Scully does not, because she's the girl here. And she has to be there for her mom and be strong for her and be strong for her siblings. Also, Melissa, her sister, is absent. And that breaks my fucking heart. Like, why is Melissa absent? That's another vlog for another day, I think. But you know what? The minute Scully was sick in the hospital, who was at her bedside first? It was her mom and her sister, Melissa. There's some beef between Melissa and her dad. And again, I think that's another vlog for another day. I think we'll talk about that when we cover One Breath. But yeah, that's... it's some complicated stuff. So Scully immediately, because she has to cope some way, because she doesn't... is not afforded the luxury of grief. She immediately talks to her mom. She's like, hey, Dad was a Navy admiral. He deserved, like, full honors at Arlington. And then Sheila looks at her daughter with this fucking stoic expression. And she's like, this is the way he wanted it. Just the family. And, like, holy shit. the Scully women are tiny but mighty. They really are. So, Maggie gets this really nice expression on her face, and she's so far beyond the grieving process, it's heartbreaking. And she's like, this song was playing when he got off the ship from the Bay of Pigs invasion, and he walked right up to her and proposed. And I'm like, damn, Bill Sr., you're a fucking baller. Like, I never realized that before. And she's like, this song was playing, like Bobby Darin's Beyond the Sea, which is one of those songs that sounds really upbeat and happy, and it's the saddest fucking song you've ever heard. I might have to stop this video because I keep coughing. So, Bill, like, proposed to Maggie in this very, very romantic way. And I kind of like that about him. That, like I said, what a baller. And then Scully looks at her mom and she's like, I know Dad didn't approve of me becoming an FBI agent. Maggie also kind of closes her eyes and shakes her head like, Dana, please don't bring this up right now. I'm trying to hold it together for your brothers and their family. But Scully looks at her mom and she's like, was he at all proud of? And then she says, me. And her voice breaks right there. Gillian Anderson's acting, god damn it. Like, in this scene, I'm a mess. I'm crying. I'm like, oh my god. And then Maggie looks at her daughter and she says simply, he was your father. I have a lot to say about that line. And I'll get to it at the end of this video. So, then you see, Luther Lee Boggs. And, I have a lot to say about Luther Lee Boggs. Okay, so Mulder and Scully are talking to Luther Lee Boggs, and one thing that this episode gets right is it's very reminiscent of The Shining. A lot of people compare this episode to Silence of the Lambs because it's about a woman FBI agent and this guy in prison's fucking around with her, being a creep. There's also a guy on the outside they're trying to track down that they think the guy on the inside's orchestrating with him. But a lot of people do not bring up how much this episode's like The Shining in its direction and its shots. One thing this episode does is it will cut from the spooky thing happening to the character experiencing, and it'll just cut back and forth. The Shining does that. It makes me shit my pants. It's terrifying. This episode is also reminiscent of The Exorcist, especially in a scene that will come later. We'll get to it. So, Luther Lee Boggs, he's played famously by Brad Dourif. There's something about Brad Dourif's performances that made me piss my pants with fear. If you don't know who he is, he played in some of the Exorcist movies. He voiced Chucky the doll in the original Chucky movies. And I'm just going to go out and say this is his best performance. I'm saying that biased as an X-Files fan, but goddamn, does this guy kick it out of the goddamn park. So, in this episode, the character of Luther Lee Boggs, who's played by Brad Dourif, is channeling the spirits of the dead. But he can also, as he explains to Mulder, he's like, from here, we can see into the past, we can know the present, and we can look into the future. So he's doing all of the shit. Luther Lee Boggs is a lot like Jean Grey in that way. He's just like, does he have this power? Yeah, sure, why not? Jean Grey is a lot like that. Jean Grey is the plot armor of the X-Men, where she can just do all the fucking things. And I think Luther Lee Boggs is that way. And Luther Lee Boggs' powers, if he indeed does have them, and I believe he does, I'll get to that. His powers are very similar to Scully's psychic powers. And so Mulder does not believe Boggs can do this. And this is where I have my questions. So, Luther Boggs believes he can channel the dead. Mulder doesn't believe them. And the reason Mulder gives is Luther Lee Boggs is orchestrating this from in the inside with his partner, Lucas Henry, who has kidnapped these kids. And they're working together. But that makes no fucking sense. Because let me tell you something. Name a time a sketchy bastard came up to Mulder and said, "Hey, LOLOL, I've got these psychic powers, and I can help you out." And Mulder immediately said, "I believe you," usually to the detriment of him and Scully and the investigation. The greatest example of this is John Lee Roach in Paper Hearts, who play for play does exactly what Boggs is doing here, and he fucking plays Mulder's ass. Okay, the sketchy CIA guy in Colony. There's another great example. Mr. X, Deep Throat, Diana Fowley. They're all playing Mulder's ass in this exact way. Why does Mulder not believe Boggs? Here's my theory. So, 1, Boggs offered Mulder previously to contact his sister. And Boggs was unable to. Because A, maybe Samantha was not dead at that time. Or B, for it to work, for him to channel the dead, the other person had to have some psychic ability. And Mulder, as we all know, has none. Scully does. So that's why I believe Mulder doesn't believe in Boggs. Is because Boggs said, "Yes, I can channel your sister." But then he's like, "Oh, but it will not work for you." And Mulder's reaction to Boggs in Beyond the Sea is very similar to his reaction to Samuel in Miracle Man. When Samuel pretty much promises Mulder the same thing. He's like, "Hey, I can channel your dead sister." And when it does not work out, Mulder's like, "This is bullshit." So that's what I believe is happening with Mulder and Boggs. I have more evidence to this. So when Boggs says, "From here we can see into the past and the present and the future," he looks directly at baby Dana Scully. And he can sense her psychic powers when she fucking walked in that prison. He's like, "Oh my God, I thought my channeling was strong. This chick's fucking got it." So Boggs is probably the most interesting antagonist on the X-Files. And this is in a series that is famous for its boring villains. Looking at you, CSM. And this series is famous for making allowances and excuses for abusive and shitty men. Almost every episode where there is an abusive and terrible man, and the show's like, "But we should see things from his perspective." I don't know what was going on in this episode, but Morgan and Wong make no such allowances for Luther Lee Boggs. Luther Lee Boggs gets the punishment he deserves to feel the horror and pain of his victims that he killed for the rest, not only of the life he has left, but for the rest of fucking eternity. And that fate terrifies him. So Mulder believes Luther Lee Boggs is making a ploy for his life, which I can see. That is a fate I would not want. But a lot of what he does, if that's true and he's just faking it, doesn't make any sense. So later on in the episode, Luther Lee Boggs is like, "Hey, I'll tell you where the kids are, but I gotta get a deal." And Scully goes to the warden and she's like, "Can we please get a deal to save these kids' life?" And the warden's like, "Fuck no, I'm not dealing with this son of a bitch. He's gonna die, because he's a terrible person." And Scully goes back to Boggs, and he knows she didn't get him the deal. And he still gives the location of the kids. That makes Boggs probably the most interesting and complex villain on the X-Files. Why does he do this? I have some theories on that. It could be he knows Scully has mojo with spirits. She's constantly seeing spirits and channeling them. And if this guy's going to a fate where the spirits of his victims will torture him for all eternity, maybe he wants someone like Dana Scully on his side. You know, that's logical. Or maybe Luther Lee Boggs wants to do one good thing in his whole evil, terrible fucking life. And at the end of the episode, like, Luther Boggs shows Scully the danger that could claim her life. He shows Mulder that, but Mulder won't believe him. So he saves... he saves Elizabeth Hall and Jim Summers' life, and he saves Scully's life as well. So, like, he is definitely the most interesting and complex villain on the X-Files, and I think that's one of the reasons I like this episode. Also, Brad Dourif's delivery. Goddamn. He sounds like different people in every scene, and when I was a kid, I was like, this is bad. Like, that's bad acting. But I'm like, no, he's channeling these different spirits. He knows, like, so his voice will change inflection. No special effects, no props, just Brad Dourif's acting. They behind the scenes, they paid a lot to get Brad Dourif on this episode, and I fucking know why. Because it's one of the best performances, not only in the X-Files, but in media. It's so good. So Brad Dourif, you know, he says, I gotta get this deal before I tell you where these kids are. And as he tells Scully, he's like, whether I'm running the show or I can really channel spirits, you're not gonna know until you get me my deal. So he gives Mulder and Scully like bits and pieces of where these kids are, and Scully goes to this warehouse he describes in this incredibly scary scene that creeps me out every time. And she finds Elizabeth Hall's charm bracelet, so she was there. Back at the motel room, Scully has set a chair in front of her own because she wants to talk to her dad again. And that it's one of those little things in the episode that just breaks my goddamn heart. Mulder comes in. He sees the chair she sat in front of her. She's quickly moving it away. She's very embarrassed about this. Mulder sees that, and he's like, why did you go to this warehouse? And she says, she's like, it's where Boggs said it would be. Jillian's delivery is, she won't even look at Mulder. Scully is afraid to believe, which is a hallmark of her personality, and this is the first time the show introduces that concept. And the Sex Files podcast said this in more eloquent terms than I can, but to paraphrase them, they said, Scully has seen the paranormal firsthand. It's not just her seeing it, it's coming within her, from within her, and it fucking terrifies her. She can't explain it. No one can help her with it. All she can say is, I can't look at this. I can't focus on this, or I can't live my life. Mulder will never have that. I mean, there'll be times when things outside of him, like a creepy alien artifact, will like influence him, his mind, but it's never coming from within him. It's always coming from within Scully. Remember how I said that Scully, when she first saw the spirit of her dead father, that wasn't the first time she saw dead people? Well, there's another X-Files episode called A Christmas Carol. And I've covered it here on this vlog, but there's different points in Scully's childhood, and you're seeing it from Scully's dreams. She's dreaming of this time. I have a headcanon that when this spooky things happen to Scully as a child, as she's seeing it from the past, those are actual memories. those things were happening to little Scully in real fucking time. So when she saw her future daughter when she was 6 in the basement, I think when Scully was 6, she really saw her future daughter. When she was 8 and she saw her future daughter's adopted mom, I think when she was 8, she really saw that vision of her daughter's adopted mom dead. Yeah, so I very much believe Scully was seeing dead people and like visions of the future and the past from the time she was little. So she was probably going to her dad and saying like, hey, I'm seeing these things I don't understand. And her dad and just immediately shut her down. I say this is coming from her dad because Maggie has these visions too. Maybe Maggie got shut down by her husband. That seems likely. And maybe she told Scully, she was like, look, you can't talk about this. Like, just, we don't talk about that. It was like, we don't talk about Bruno in the Scully family. We don't talk about Dana's precognitive visions. That Scully was the Bruno of the Scully family just cracks me up. Melissa was definitely the Mirabelle Madrigal. So, or maybe Melissa was Louisa in Encanto, just trying to keep everything fucking together and then getting so tired and burnt out, she's just like, fuck it, I know, I can't do this anymore. Here, younger sibling, I'm passing this trauma to you, to Scully. So, I don't believe this is the first time Scully has seen dead people. Also, I believe that Scully believes on a instinctive level that she can intercede for people who are dying. I think that's why she took her father's death so hard, is it was sudden. That's why she took Melissa's death so hard, is because it was so sudden and she couldn't get there to their bedside to save them. I also think Melissa Scully has this power because in one breath, she sure as hell guides her sister back from the land of the dead, doesn't she? I think something happened in Scully's childhood where she interceded for a dying person. As we find out in the revival, her baby brother Charlie was very sick and her mom made her kids, quote, pray for baby Charlie every night. And I think that was the first time Scully interceded for a dying person. And she was like, oh, I can do this. Okay. So I just need to get to someone before death claims them. And yeah, it'll be good. I can save them. And I think that's why she blames herself so much for her father and her sister's death. So Mulder and Scully have a little chat in the motel room after they find Elizabeth Hall's bracelet. And at first, it seems very sweet. Like, Mulder's getting down on Scully's level. He's saying, like, you know, if this job is making you feel, like, ashamed or confused, you need to step away, which is fucking rich, Fox Mulder. How many times have you done that? He's like, if your personal feelings are interfering with your job, you need to step away, Scully. And I'm like, yeah, Mulder. How many times did you do that? Never. Like, Mulder always makes it about himself. And you know what? He's gonna make this about himself, too. Like, Mulder cannot not make it about himself. Like, Scully's literally seeing visions of the dead. Her father's just died. She's being creeped on by this psychic serial killer. And Mulder's like, but it's about me. It's about me. Like, it really shows his self-centeredness. Like, Mulder, you really can't step away for a second and, like, look at this situation, dude. So he tells Scully, he's like, Boggs is mad at me for putting him away. So he's trying to get you. You'll be the next best thing. It's all about me, Scully. Me, me, me. And I'm like, fuck you, dude. You know? So, he gaslights Scully, which is fucked up. Because in this scene where he's like bending down and talking to her and being so gentle, and he's just gaslighting her. He's like, Scully, what you're seeing, it's just not there. Because when has Mulder seen anything and not believed it, right? So, why does Mulder gaslight Scully? I keep saying I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about it now. So, one of my theories is, in Mulder's mind, when he can, quote, prove Scully wrong, it gives his life some stability. And when she steps out of that role and takes the believer role, it terrifies him because his world's falling apart. My other theory is Mulder sees himself as this Messiah. He is this chosen one. Very much Mulder has main character syndrome. And it's a role he has spent his entire adult life preparing for. He's thrown everything he has into researching the paranormal and researching these supernatural cases to assume this role as a Messiah figure, as a chosen one. And then suddenly, this redhead who claims to not even believe in the paranormal breezes into his life and just picks up that chosen one role and takes it away from him. And it very much reminds me of Kung Fu Panda, where Tigress is going to be chosen as the dragon warrior, and Poe just like fucks onto the scene, and Master Oogway chooses him. That's how I view this. Like, Scully didn't want this role. She didn't want to be the chosen one, but she is. She is this Messiah-like figure. When Mulder, who has prepared his entire adult life to assume it, it's just not there for him. He's not the chosen one. Mulder can't reconcile this. And I think that's another reason he gaslights Scully, because that's relatable. Like, what if you prepared your entire life for something and it was just taken away from you by someone who didn't even care about what you're preparing yourself for? But it's also really fucking shitty, because if Scully is his touchstone, if she's his 1 in 5 billion, you know, if they're the blueprint of romance, why does he fucking treat her this way? If he so highly values Scully, wouldn't he be helping her? And Mulder's in the position to do it. He knows so much about the supernatural, you know, like, he claims to know so much about this stuff. He could be helping her. He could be telling her, like, Scully, what you're feeling is valid and good. Because every other fucking person he encounters, he tells them that. But not Dana Scully. And that's fucking shitty, Mulder. It really shows how Mulder's entire character revolves around his fucking overblown ego. And it's one of the reasons I just don't like him. Like, he's so self-centered. Like, and it's very much like if Mulder was really going on this quest to find his sister and not just a quest for his own self-validation to, like, fulfill this role he sees himself in, I could like him. But he does it for the other reason, and I can't. So Mulder tells Scully, he says, she says, I thought you'd be happy that I would, you know, believe in the paranormal. And he says, believe in the paranormal. He says, but only when it's the truth. And the translation is, Scully, believe in the paranormal only when I say so. Which is all kinds of fucked up. Mulder has another thing where he, like, wants Scully so badly to believe the way he believes, but when she does, he's like, no, I can't handle this. Which is all kinds of shitty behavior, Mulder. And he also says, believe in the paranormal. And he's like, that goes for Boggs and for your father. And with him glancing at Scully, like, setting the chairs opposite herself to try to see her dad again, I think when Mulder was interrogating Boggs told him that. He's like, hey, your partner can channel the dead just like me. And later on, he says it on screen. He's like, Scully believes me. Scully can do these things. And I really think that scared Mulder. you know, and he's like, I have to double down on gaslighting her. I can't have this. I cannot have my skeptical lady partner being the chosen one, being the one who's doing these things and seeing these things. Like, it very much shows just how trashy Mulder is. It makes me lividly angry when he was in the position all these years to help her with this, and he just fucking didn't. It, like, okay, and it's like, oh, but they're the blueprint for romance, aren't they? Like, oh, Mulder loves Scully more than any other fucking thing. I'm like, yeah, maybe fanfiction Mulder does when his when his problematic behaviors are actually addressed, but not in canon, no. So, God, I've covered so many points that I was waiting to get later on in the plot to, and this video is going to be over an hour. So, I guess we're going to have to skip ahead a little bit. So, Boggs shows them the place through his psychic channeling, where, Lucas Henry is keeping the kids. I also have to throw in this little bit. One of my favorite quotes from the X-Files is when Mulder comes into the motel room and he tells Scully, he's like, oh, Boggs, I had to sit through all of his channeling, and he's like, I asked him to call up the soul of Jimi Hendrix and requested all along the watchtower. And I'm like, wow, we really didn't get to see that? Because that would have been epic. Okay. I want to see that deleted scene where Boggs is just screeching all along the watchtower as Jimi Hendrix, and Mulder's like sitting there like, yeah, man, all right. So they go to this place. Boggs warns Mulder. He's like, hey, I see your blood spilled on the White Cross. Don't go near the White Cross. And Mulder, who's always listened to every perceived psychic from Clyde Bruckman to Samuel to John Lee Roach, says, nah, that's bullshit. And guess what? Mulder gets shot by a White Cross and his blood spills on it. Scully rolls up into Boggs's cell and yells at him so loudly her little baby face turns red. And I'm going to say that scene of Gillian Anderson screaming at Brad Dourif is solely responsible for my soft dom mommy issues. For my soft dom mommy kink. So, then Boggs tells Scully, he's like, he channels Mulder. It looks like Mulder sitting in front of her, and then it looks like her dad sitting in front of her, and he's like, look, why won't you believe? He's like, it's right there. It's coming from you. You should believe this, baby. And then Scully says, and again, Jillian's acting like her voice breaks. She says, I'll believe you if you let me talk to him. And it's just, this scene, she's clutching her head. She doesn't want to look at him. She looks like a little lost child who's terrified. These things that she thought she'd grown out of, that had been happening since her childhood, has reemerged in force. And all she wants to do is hug her dad. Jesus Christ. I want to reach to the scene and like hug her and like, come here, baby. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And then Boggs is like, I'm not going to let you talk to your dad until I get a deal. So Scully's in the hospital room talking to Mulder, and he's like, don't deal with Boggs, even though I'm going to deal with every sketchy fucking bastard that comes on this show, Dana Scully. Mulder, you fucking hypocrite. In this episode, I want to punch him in his face. I want to break his nose. I really do. I want Scully to break his nose, okay? So Scully does deal. She goes, like I said, to the warden. The warden's like, no, fuck you. I'm not giving this guy a deal. So she goes back to Boggs and she tells him, hey, I got your deal, which of course is not true. And Boggs tells her, like, he's keeping the kids at this old brewing warehouse where they brew beer, which is a cool description. He's like, there's big circles, there's big vats, and like a blue devil. And then he tells Scully, he's like, oh, and I also know you lied. There's no deal. But he says, I know you tried. And he's like, so, you know, when I'm in the gas chamber. He's like, and they're going to throw the switch. He's like, be there as my witness, and I will give you your father's message. So they go and they find the kids. They're fine. Well, they're not fine. They're fucking traumatized. They're alive. Also, poor Elizabeth Hall. Like, she's just been brutalized by this man. Her face is all kinds of fucked up. And she has to identify him in a lineup. And I'm like, that's awful. Fuck me. Also, there's this douchebag detective. And he's like, oh, Lucas Henry, this guy who abducted him. He's like, he did a few minor things in his past, like sexual assault. And I'm like, fuck you, guy. You piece of trash. So, they go to the Blue Devil Brewing Company. They find the kids. There's also this scene where this FBI agent runs up these stairs. Lucas Henry fucking clocks him with a bucket. And the guy falls down the stairs and Scully just like runs up, letting the guy take the fall for her. It cracks me up every fucking time. So Scully sees a blue devil and Boggs is like, hey, don't go to the devil when you go to this place. And Lucas Henry runs. The scaffolding he's running across is like rotten and he falls to his death. And Scully's like, whoa, Boggs saved my life and these kids' life. So Scully goes back and Boggs is like, you got some unfinished business. And he's like, be there at my execution. I'll give you your dad's message. And then you see Boggs being led to the gas chamber. And as first of all, he sits down to his last meal and he sees the spirits of his family hanging over his shoulder, watching him eat his last meal. And I'm like, that is some fucked up horror right there. I love it when the X-Files leans into horror, and this episode is 100% psychological horror, and I fucking love it. And then, if that's not enough, he's being led down the hallway to the gas chamber, and all of his victims are watching him, and it is some scary ass shit. It reminds me of the scene in The Princess and the Frog where Dr. Facilier, the Shadow Man, is drugged down to hell, and all you see on his gravestone is his face screaming. That's what it reminds me of. That's that level of fucked up shit. There's these two twin ladies, these two old ladies who are identical twins. I'd love to hear their story. And they're turning to watch him walk down the hall, and that's some shining shit, and I love it. So they get Boggs in the gas chamber. They're like, are there any last words? He sees his witness, and it's the warden from the list. It's not Dana Scully. And he's like, no. And like I said, Boggs is a very interesting and complex character, but he's not a good guy, and I don't feel sorry for him. He's still a murderer, and he dies. So it goes back to Scully in Mulder's hospital room, and yay, Mulder's better. But yay, he's going to gaslight Scully some more. So after all of this time, when Mulder's like, oh, Scully, your visions of the dead shit, Boggs is shit, what you're feeling and what you're experiencing is bullshit, and I just gaslit you all this time, he's like, Dana, why can't you believe? And I'm like, fuck you, alien boy. I don't care if Mulder's in the hospital. I want to fucking throw him in a dumpster, okay? And so Scully's like, I'm afraid to believe. And I'm like, yeah, girl, valid. And Mulder's like, even if you would have gotten your father's message, you still won't believe. Not like I haven't gaslit you this whole goddamn episode, Dana Scully. And then Scully looks at Mulder, one of my favorite lines in the series, and she's like, but I know what my father would have told me. And Mulder's like, what? And he's like, how do you know? And then she calls back that line her mom said to him, and she's like, he was my father. And that breaks my heart. It's so good. I mean, I'm crying now. Like, Scully just, she knew her dad loved her. She knew her dad was proud of her. And this is the first vlog I'm crying in because this scene just fucks me up. Like, in one breath, when she sees her dad's spirit and he talks to her, he tells her that. He's like, out of all the accommodations and medals I got, as a Navy admiral, he's like, you and my other kids are the ones, like, they're the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm like, fuck, I just want to hug my dad. And like Scully, I'll never be able to again. So what I have to say to you on my birthday is, if you have a loved one, just give them a hug, man. Tell them you love them. You don't know how long you've got. And I know that sounds cliched, and you've probably heard that. I gotta pull it together 1,000 fucking times, but do it. Like, hug your loved ones, kiss your mom, hug your dad, you know, and tell them you love them. You know, if you have kids, tell your kids you love them. If you have friends, siblings, tell them, say, hey, I love you. You don't know how much time you've got left. And on my birthday, hopefully I have many more years to go. Thanks for watching these. Shout out to the X-Files chat room podcast. They've given me some great shout outs, and I really appreciate you. 2 awesome gals. Give them a listen. You can find me on Twitter. I am at raccoons_dead. Find me on Tumblr. I am at Just Awful X-Men Art. I am going to be cranking out some X-Men art. I have an X-Men project in the future, so stay tuned for that if you love X-Men. X-Men and X-Files are my 2 favorite things in the world, after my daughter and my spouse and my mom and my mini animals. Yeah. Also, I am on Instagram at Dead Raccoons Draws It. I am on DeviantArt at Deads/Raccoons, and I'm here on YouTube. Leave me a comment. I love all you people. I am gonna go drink Bacardi like it's your birthday. Bye. I love you. Mwah.